Sorry. Welcome to the 12th annual meeting of Climate First. I'm Ted Conwell, Director of Climate First. And I really appreciate folks coming to the meeting. It's a beautiful day outside today. It's a little chilly compared to yesterday, but it's absolutely beautiful. So appreciate you if you're in the Washington, D.C. area. Anyway, appreciate you coming to the meeting. Here's another person just coming in. So first of all, we have some housekeeping issues. Could you just, we have too many folks to have them introduce themselves to everyone. So could you just introduce yourself in the chat if you want to do that? Oh, and I forgot to mention, we are also going to take some photos, some screenshots, if that's all right. Please let me know if that's an issue. So next, I'd like to introduce the current Climate First board members, as well as one that just left us a few days ago, or resigned, I should say, a few days ago. First is Sasan Degan, who is with us today. And Sasan is a very talented person. He has a lot of skills in a lot of different areas. He's been with Climate First, on the Climate First board since 2016, if you can imagine that. And he's really meant a lot to us, helping in fundraising, helping with computer issues sometimes, and various other issues. Part of his background involves, at least in years past, is working for a nonprofit who helps nonprofits. So he's very skilled in a lot of different issues that nonprofits worry about. So we're very lucky to have Sasan on our board, part of our organization, and here today. And then second, we have our second board member is Fred Krimgold, who's here today. And he's been with us since 2020. And I was thinking it was like 2 years ago he came on the board, but no, the years just fly by, as you know. And Fred has an amazing background, having, I believe, gone to university in Stockholm, Sweden. And then he worked in Sweden for a while. And then I guess he came back home. I forget. I think he came back home back to the United States after that. But he has a very international oriented mind, and he's extremely gifted at not tearing apart, but breaking down issues and finding the most important information and how to address the issue and how to move forward or not move forward. And he has a PhD in architect at some architect school, I believe, in Stockholm, if that's right, Fred. So he's obviously has a brilliant mind. And then lastly, our board member that had to leave us, unfortunately, Ian Halloran. I believe he left due to a job situation where he has to work partly on weekends. And Ian was with us for about a year and a half, and was extremely busy with us and helping us, attending meetings that I couldn't go. And he's from Scranton, Pennsylvania, and moved down here to get involved in government and work on the climate issue. And I ran into him when he worked at the food co-op, and quickly signed him up to work with us as a volunteer. And we miss him a lot, but totally understand that he's moved on, at least for now, looking for a job in the government. And so when an opportunity popped up, he had to take it. So anyway, I now wanted to introduce our main speaker.
I just got the notification that the meeting is being recorded, and I'm so glad it is, because that was a great talk, and appreciate you coordinating that, Ted. So for the next portion of the meeting, I'll go ahead and introduce Ted. As most of you already know, Ted is our founder. So before founding Climate First, incorporated in 2012, Ted practiced as a court-appointed attorney for 10 years. He was litigating child neglect and abuse cases in Washington, D.C. Previously, he worked mostly in the environmental field for U.S. Department of Justice's Environmental Enforcement Section, U.S. Senator Paul Wellstone, Delaware Nature Society, among other organizations. Ted has a Juris Doctorate and Master's in Environmental Law from Vermont Law School. He lives in the Silver Spring, Maryland area with his wife, where they both enjoy the great outdoors in all seasons. Ted has served as the president of Climate First's board of directors and is its director since the birth of the nonprofit organization. Ted?
Thank you, Sasan. Well, I wanted to talk about really two things. Our work in Climate First work in 2024, and celebrate that some, which is what the annual meeting in part is for, to celebrate the previous year. And then also I wanted to talk about how we're going to move forward this year in view of what's happening in our country, at least at the federal level, the federal government. But I will say, talking about the past year, it seems like it's almost not relevant anymore at all. Things have changed so much in the last month and, well, maybe it's 5 weeks now, 6 weeks that he's been in office. Yeah, it was actually longer than that now. So time has really moved away from 2024 so quickly. Things are so different now. So I'm not going to focus on last year as much as I normally would at an annual meeting. But I do want to say a few things about last year, because it was an important year in many ways. We did accomplish some things in coalition with other groups, of course. And it's also going to affect how we move forward this year to some extent. First, I'd just like to mention that, and this is old news, and you probably heard it. Well, you've heard it every year for the last 5 or 6 years now. The World Meteorological Organization reported last month that 2024 was the warmest year on record. And that's been happening every year for a number of years now. It's pretty sad, but anyway, and similar to that in some sense, the role of banks, major U.S. banks, is following that trend. U.S. banks are leading nearly every bank, every other country's bank in the world, in funding fossil fuels. And that hasn't changed much at all in the last 10 years, 10, 15 years. And so it's, when you look at that, all the money flowing to fossil fuels, it's not surprising at all that in 2024, the U.S. led the world again in extracting oil and gas. as far as our campaign strategy in 2024, we were already modifying that strategy when January 1st came around in 2024. We were doing less naming and shaming. I mean, how many organizations, how many banks actually are moved when people come up and beat them on the top of on their heads and say, look, you're spending too much money and on dirty energy and not enough on clean energy. You got to change now. That just wasn't really working very well. So we started moving away from that and start promoting green and ethical banking. Green banking being more large banks that encourage investments in clean energy. Like in Montgomery County, there's a green bank. In DC, there's a green bank. I believe there was a bill to start a green bank at the federal, or I should say national level. I don't think it went anywhere. And then ethical banking is they're usually smaller banks that provide services to customers like you and I. But they don't invest in fossil fuels, or they support affordable housing, work on issues like that, usually more local issues. In our annual meeting last year, we had the chief sustainability officer at Amalgamated Bank, which is an ethical lender that doesn't lend to fossil fuels at all. And he gave the main talk at our annual meeting, and I got a lot of good feedback about that. So we really, at every chance we had, we really tried to share information on green and ethical banking, whether it was tabling at several festivals or just sharing the information on our website and sending it out via social media, stuff like that, as much as we could. And try to really help green ethical banking, to try to help it grow and try to show that the big major U.S. banks, they're going to suffer at some point if they don't start moving over to clean energy fast. We also began in 2024 to look at the use of other tools in our work, other tactics. And the biggest one was civil disobedience. Again, our work, our naming and shaming campaigns weren't really working very well over the last 4 or 5 years. We weren't really getting anywhere. The local branch bank managers, we would meet with them or demonstrate at their banks, and they would always say to us in one way or another, we can't do anything. That's home office stuff. Don't bother us with your issues. Or we would meet with ESG, upper level executives, and usually via Zoom, if not telephone. And they didn't listen to our questions. We would say, when are you going to reduce your investments in fossil fuels? And they would never answer the question. They would just greenwash, just throw greenwashed information at us for 20 minutes in their answers. So, that was useless. So we started to give up on them, on talking with them. And um, the other thing that really was the most important thing last year, though, that we got involved in was the Stop the Money Pipeline Coalition's campaign, which was called the Summer of Heat on Wall Street. And that's a campaign in New York City, mostly in New York City. And it was a summer long campaign, so roughly 3 months. There turned out to be really historic because there were more than 5,000 activists across the country involved in roughly 49 direct actions, mostly at Citibank's Manhattan headquarters. And there were 752 arrests, all nonviolent civil disobedience. And Climate First attended 5 of the campaign's actions, mostly supporting other activists' civil disobedience. But I have to admit, I got arrested once and spent a couple of hours in jail, which was interesting. Some things that came out of the Summer of Heat, they weren't dramatic successes, but some positive things came out of them, came out of the campaign. And we really built solidarity with frontline people that are hammered by climate disasters, if not climate pollution, which included the U.S. Gulf South and some other areas in the U.S. and also overseas, Uganda and Bangladesh. End result, did Citi dramatically change its policies vis-a-vis fossil fuel investments? No, they did cut back a little bit on their fossil fuel investments compared to earlier years. And they did strengthen their Amazon policy in a positive way, which meant less money for companies that are destroying the rainforest. So those 2 things were positive. But are they going to save our climate and keep us under 2 degrees? Probably not. But anyway, Summer of Heat is going to go forward in 2025, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But that's pretty much it for last year. I mean, we were involved in some name and shame work, which there has been some positive development in, and that's the Costco campaign, or Costco Clean Up Your Credit Card campaign. And that's where we used the leverage of Costco over its credit card provider, Citibank. And we tried to get Costco to talk to Citibank. That campaign's been around a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. But we were involved in it last year, and to encourage Costco to talk to the Citibank executives and say, look, you don't start reducing your investments in fossil fuels, we're going to move on to a new credit card company or a new bank with a different credit card. And so there were a lot of actions against Costco or at Costco, and we were involved in that. And other things we did last year, post-election events to try to get inspired. They actually were helpful that we attended. But I really want to get on to 2025. I think that's why a lot of people are here, to find out, how do we get past the despair? It's almost despair of what's happening these days. I mean, I'm talking just about climate issues, but you name the issue, and it seems that it's being dealt with in a negative way, in a terrible way by the current administration. So we, I want to talk about, yes, our work has become much more challenging, and President Trump has started the process of the U.S. again leaving the Paris Climate Accord, and he's blocking IRA monies from being spent. That's the Inflation Reduction Act, which has a lot of climate uh, pro, pro provisions in it. He stopped wind and solar projects from going forward. Just name it. Energy. He announced an energy emergency, which is just stupidity. I mean, there's so much dirty energy out there. There's no emergency. Um, it just seemed as soon as he got in office, after a week, it seemed like the new administration was engaging in anti-climate protection actions on a daily basis. And I don't know, I was stunned at first, and I started wondering, God, am I just going to fall into despair and just give up? And what's happening here? This is madness. Um, but I don't know. I and others that I work with, we stayed up on what was going on, and in a negative way, of course. But we also started to look for positive things were happening, and how are we going to adjust? How are we going to move forward? How are we going to deal with all the negativity out there and still work and have some notion that there's a chance we might actually do some good work that might make a difference. And I found some good articles that were really helpful that basically would help me and others adjust our mindsets while also changing our strategies and campaigns to this new world that we work in. And one was an inspiring email that I got from me, and many others got from the co-director of the Stop the Money Pipeline Coalition. And his name is, some of you know him, Alex Swanson. And it was a really, I'm going to share some of it with you. It was really helpful in how climate activists should move forward and deal with all the craziness and the anti-climate stuff coming out of the new administration. So one article, or actually this was Alex's idea. He actually suggested that we always keep this thought at the forefront of our minds. And I say it in quotes: every fraction of a degree of warming that we prevent will reduce human suffering and death and keep more of the climate's, or I should say, the planet's natural systems intact, unquote. Maybe in a more concrete way, this might work better for you. Whatever the federal government does to slow the drive to address climate change, the climate movement can still do critical work if it constantly organizes, modifies its work when necessary, and is successful at least in a few of its campaigns. And I thought, wow, so if we keep working our tails off and we're successful a little bit, and stopping a few projects and keeping some greenhouse gas gas molecules, greenhouse gases, mostly CO2 molecules, out of the air, we're actually going to save some lives. We're going to save some ecosystems from just falling apart. And that's actually science. There's some science there. I've known that for years. If you just keep a few CO2 molecules out of the air, you actually will make a difference as far as global warming. So in other words, it's better to stay under 2 degrees. It's not great, but it's better than being, 2.5 degrees over Celsius over pre-industrial temperatures.
But how are we going to do that, Ted? What are we going to do to keep it even a half a degree less?
Judy, that's a great question. We're going to get, this is connected with Alex's presentation. We're going to get involved in more local stuff, state level stuff. This polluter pays legislation can really make a difference. Yes, the fossil fuel companies are going to sue, their tails off over this stuff. And I've already read some articles about the arguments they're making. I don't really remember them. So I can't, other than it's unconstitutional. That was one argument. But they're going to come out and just fight, just like the tobacco companies. They're going to fight their tails off to the end.
Are we going to keep on with Costco, or what result was there for Costco to change their credit card?
All right, in 2024, there was success in that area. The top activists of the Costco campaign actually met with Costco executives twice. They met with them in, I believe it was February, early in the year. And they talked with the CEO, and then they met with the CEO again in November or December of last year.
And have they changed their credit card bank?
No, they're still talking. They've actually talked with Citibank about the issue.
Well, that's good.
The issue of Citibank reducing their investments in fossil fuels. So there has been success there. It's just not immediate success, of course. And, has Citi actually done anything? No, but they're listening. And Costco, as you know, I'm sure is one of the most popular retailers in the country. So they have a lot of leverage. So that's one thing we're going to do. Then there's other stuff. There's other state level stuff. We've worked on a Maryland state pension plan. Maryland state pension plan invests a lot of money in fossil fuels, and we would like to get them to start divesting from fossil fuels. In a liberal state like Maryland, we think there should be a chance. The last time we didn't get anywhere, but that was 2-3 years ago.
I was just up at the Capitol on Wednesday in Annapolis for an advocacy day, and I'm wondering if some of the rest of you are involved with any of the other environmental groups locally to put some pressure on the Maryland legislature to pass environmental bills. One that we were working on was the one to electrify all new housing in Maryland. That certainly would be good if we could get that one passed. And I know in Washington, I'm working on the bottle bill. And I know that there is a bottle bill for Maryland. I don't know if any of you are working on that, but to reduce plastic in the atmosphere and to stop producing plastic. So I'm just wondering what other groups you all are working with.
Well, one thought that I have is that, as was started by this meeting, this annual meeting, was identifying champions for our cause. And we have an excellent champion in Chris Van Hollen, and there are others. And I think that what we may want to do is focus on those people who are already in a position to work effectively. The other person that I thought of that I think Ted is aware of is a state senator, Katie, what's her last name?
Hester.
Katie Hester, right. And she is doing basically the same thing polluter pays at the state level. And I think, and she's right there in Montgomery County. And I think that if we could think about ways that we could effectively support her, distribute information, give concrete actions that people can take, and the same for Chris Van Hollen. And also, I have to say, one very good prospect in Virginia, which isn't otherwise so great, is the car dealer. The guy,
Don Beyer.
Don Beyer, thank you. Yeah, Don Beyer has actually come out with as a supporter of the House version of the Polluter Plays initiative. And so I think if there are things that we can do sort of close to home and with sort of very high potential payoff and direct communication with other human beings, and putting together materials that we can distribute as we've done in the past, that this more positive approach is something that I think people need some hope. People need something uplifting. They need a sense that there is an alternative, that they're not lost with Musk and JD.
Right.
And so I think that if we can begin to craft our new program exactly as Ted was saying, looking forward rather than backward, and finding out where our resources are and figuring out how we can most effectively support them.
And the insurance campaign, Fred has sent me some information about that. We've never really got involved in insurance work, but they've actually had some success over the years. And I'm talking about large insurance companies like Chubb and stuff. They've got, they're not insuring fossil fuel projects anymore.
State Farm.
Is it State Farm?
Yeah, well, see what they're doing. They are blue lining. They are cutting off people who are in high risk areas.
Oh, right.
And that, that's absolutely antisocial. And so,
and there already is a big campaign against the insurance companies over this climate issue and blue lining, and their insurance companies have a lot of available money to invest. That's how their business works, and a lot of that money they're investing in dirty energy. But they seem to be more movable, if that's the right word.
Well, there's a more obvious contradiction. The fact that are directly investing in what causes the damage that they are
Right.
insuring against.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then in the chat, Marianne said that as far as what other organizations are doing stuff, Maryland Catholics for a Common Home is advocating for a few state bills this year, and she's part of that drive.
Yeah.
I'm with the Methodists. That's what I was at the advocacy day. The Methodists, they're doing the same thing, Marianne.
Okay, great.
We in Northern Virginia, we've got the Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions.
Great.
And we've got the Interfaith Power and Light.
Yes.
And,
Interfaith Power and Light is very active, and so is Sierra Club.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And I think what we have to do is sort of unify our strategic planning and take responsibility for specific parts.
yeah, it's been hard the last month and a half, but I can really see that groups are starting to turn it around, and instead of just sitting there listening to the news and just wondering, oh my God, what am I going to do? People are now starting to do stuff, and even people in red states, Georgia and stuff. They're confronting
Yeah.
their legislators and meetings and stuff, and maybe they're blue. Maybe they're Democrats. Wearing Republican clothes, but I don't know. But I've seen
a lot of good Republicans that believe in helping others and doing the right thing. We have to admit that.
That's right. Yeah. Most people are good.
That's right.
Yeah.
We have to remember that.
Yeah, and an issue like tax revenues being spent on, cleaning up after climate disasters, that's a bipartisan issue. I mean, who doesn't care about wasting money?
Tax revenues directly subsidizing the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah, so I think there's a chance, we can really get some people to work with, and from the other side, but we need to use the right language and clever campaigns, and so yeah, it's been a crazy month and a half, but I think we're starting to turn it around and figure out how we're going to go forward as a movement.
Yeah.
And,
but also, can we maybe make a list of who we consider to be our champions at the local level, at the state level, and also at the national level, but particularly what we can do on a more or less personal basis, that is, who we can communicate with. Because I'm afraid that the national campaigns are a little too theoretical.
My husband has a good idea, though, he does write to President Trump, and he said the latest letter is, you'll never get the Peace Prize unless you work on Ukraine and get back to work on the and that would appeal to Trump. So.
Yeah,
brother. Yeah. All right, well, we're close to time. Does anybody else have any questions or issues they wanted to bring up?
Well, what is Fred, what do you suggest? Whom should we write to, or what should we do for our champions? And I live in DC, so I don't have anybody to write. I'm so frustrated. I have no vote in anything.
Yeah.
Well, there are initiatives. There are causes, like there is a green bank in DC.
Yeah.
And so organizing support for the green bank in DC could be a very worthwhile thing.
Okay, well, send us some info on it, because I'd like to know about what I should do for the green bank in DC.
And maybe I could ask that anybody who has a candidate for a local champion might send it to Ted. so that
Right,
we
right.
put together our list.
Good idea.
All right, Judy. Yeah, I'll send you some information on the DC Green Bank.
I would also like to just add that, in addition to legislation, which is, a big portion of the solution, it's, we also have the opportunity of voting with our dollars,
Yeah.
right? So we can invest in clean energy ourselves, right?
That's right.
There's even a website called climatize.earth where you can invest in solar energy and earn up to 10% annually, right? So I, as an investor, would give money to these guys, and then they'll spend it building solar farms. And
Send that
so,
info to us too, okay?
Yeah, please.
but,
No,
right.
Climatize, climatize.org.
Climatize.earth. But essentially, the goal is, hey, the companies that we shop at, they're going to stay in business and do better, and the ones that we don't shop at, they'll have to just shut down. Like, I moved to a house in DC about a year and a half ago. We gutted all the fossil fuel parts of it. We're fully electric, right? So eventually, when I have enough money, I'll try to get solar and batteries, et cetera, right? So, if I can't do anything with legislation immediately, at least I can do, voting with my dollars, right? And that's what we should try to encourage everybody else to do as well.
Another thing about capitalism is that if you can make more money with clean energy than you
Right.
can with dirty energy, everybody will do it.
That's what we're trying to convince the United Methodist Church all over the country to divest from fossil fuels, because solar is making more money than those fossil fuel companies now.
Right, right. That's what will cause the turnaround.
Yeah, ironically, Texas has more wind energy, I believe, than any other state in the country.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it has for years. It's just, it makes a ton of money.
Well,
They've
we
got
were
more-
amazed
they've got-
when driving across, drove to New Mexico and back through Texas. We were amazed at the number of windmills that we
Yeah,
saw there.
They've
yeah.
got more wind.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Judy, I will definitely send you some information on the DC Green Bank and
Okay.
anything else I can think of. And one last question from anybody?
Well, thank you, Ted, for setting up this meeting with the speaker. This was really good.
Yes.
Yeah, she was good. Well, really appreciate everybody coming today. It's great seeing all of you. And we're just going to keep on fighting on. Our mindsets are beginning to change and move on. And we're going to win this fight. It's just going to take a little bit longer, but we're going to win this fight sooner or later, in the long run anyway. So thank you so much for attending. And if you have any other issues or questions, please email me. I know you have our email address, my email address, or call me or text me, whatever.
Oh, Ted, could you send out, if everybody is okay with this idea, a list of the attendees at this meeting and either
With
phone numbers or emails?
Right.
I'd be fine with that. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so I would send out a list of the attendees to
Yeah.
each one of everybody on the
With
call.
emails.
Yeah,
To everyone. Yeah, sure, I'll do that.
great.
Okay, and I'll include Alex,
Yeah,
the main speaker today.
right.
Keynote speaker, but she didn't want to be called that. So for whatever reason.
Modest.
Alex
don't for-
Swanson.
don't forget the 2026 elections. The campaigns are already starting.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. Hope you
Thank
have a
you.
good rest of your Sunday.
Thanks,
Okay,
Ted.
Thanks.
Thanks,
All
Ted.
right.